the NBA draft has just concluded, and the Dallas Mavericks walk away with Cooper Flagg, and then post-draft signing Ryan Nembhard and Miles Kelly. This draft is something that I am super excited to see, whatever comes from it. Obviously, Cooper Flagg is a generational prospect, right? That word gets thrown around too much, but I do think it applies here. I hope it applies, right? But really, what intrigues me for the Mavericks is Ryan Nembhard, possibly Miles Kelly, right? I feel like it's a good idea to add more shooting to a roster that lacks shooting. But Ryan Nembhard is a guy that I really wanted. He was number 1 on my draft board for the second round for the Mavericks, right? Obviously, for other teams would want someone else, but Ryan Nembhard fits perfectly for what the Mavericks want to do, or at least what the Mavericks should want to do, right? We've got this great front court, and on paper, we've got Kyrie Irving and Brandon Williams, who I believe in both of them. They can both do great things, especially Kyrie, obviously, but Brandon Williams is a guy that I'm super high on his upside in the NBA. But, the Mavericks currently lack that depth at point guard. And Ryan Nembhard is a guy who can set people up, right? We have a bunch of rim rollers like D Live and Daniel Gafford, Anthony Davis, and then other guys who need to be, fed the ball. PJ Washington can drive a little bit, but it's not really what you want him to do. Cooper Flagg, we don't really know yet, but I'm sure he's probably got a decent enough handle to where you'd be okay with him putting the ball on the deck. But we need somebody to set people up, and there is nobody in this draft class that is better at that than Ryan Nembhard. Led the entire NCAA in assists per game, and even led his conference, and I think steals per game. His downside is that he's small, right? He's about 5 inches smaller than his brother, and same with his wingspan. But, he's a solid on-the-floor leader who can just dish the ball out, set up people on lobs, quick little dishes right at the end of plays to all of our great play finishers. So I think Ryan Nembhard is a great fit. I also thought that we could have left the second round with like Cam Jones, Tyrese Proctor, Javon Small, maybe Hunter Salas, but I was less high on him just because his three-point shot did not fall at all in his most recent year in college. But yeah, I watched a lot of Big 12 ball, so Javon Small was someone who I was interested in. Tyrese Proctor, obviously, Mavs fans fell in love with because his connection with Derek Lively and Cooper Flagg, and his three-point shot is really attractive, and his overall shooting percentage, he's probably the best shooter out of all these guys I just mentioned. Cam Jones is a guy who's an electric scorer, but, he also added more of a playmaker role, but his shot was less consistent this year. I think Ryan Nembhard is exactly what we needed, and I would have been happy, to have traded an Omax or Jaden Hardy to even get in there to pick him in the second round. So I'm really happy that we were able to just get him, not give anything up. I thought we would have to, or just not do it. So I think this is honestly a match made in heaven, having him on this team. Kind of reminds me of, say, like a Tyler Kolek pick, or and honestly his brother. He reminds me a lot of his brother. Might just be the look, but I think they play very similarly. It reminds me of a Jalen Brunson pick, if Mavs fans remember that. Or I had one other comp, but yeah, those guys, all interesting. I think he's a very similar mold of player, and he's only like 6 feet tall, right? So he fits that Jalen Brunson sort of idea of a player. I think Miles Kelly can be interesting as somebody who can just play off of other people. That's what I thought Proctor could have fit well with Nembhard or with Cam Jones, as just someone who could, feed off of the creation. But, instead we have Miles Kelly, who's also a very good shooter. And he proved that at Auburn. He had a couple, maybe an up and down year at Georgia Tech, but he's shown he's a volume shooter, good at it. I hope we can see that continue in the NBA. He's got a good range. I saw some videos on him where he was shooting like 25 feet out, and that his shot just looked good. So I hope that translates. Also, I wrote down Musa Cisse. Obviously, I watched a bunch of Big 12 play because I watch a lot of Texas Tech and UT. And so I watched him at Oklahoma State for a couple of years. I think great defensive prospect. Obviously, he's not on a two-way deal, but he has a chance to earn it. We have one more two-way deal to hand out after Nembhard and Kelly. So yeah, he's interesting. Other guys are also interesting. I just don't know anything about them, so I'm not going to talk about them. So those are my sort of takeaways from the draft. Obviously, Cooper Flagg, A+, just don't mess it up, and they didn't mess it up, so A+ for that. And then Ryan Nembhard, I think, is a perfect pickup post-draft, along with Miles Kelly being able to space the floor. Nice. Now I'll talk a little bit free agency. The Mavericks have 14 players under contract, I'm pretty sure, leaving one roster spot outside of the two-way deals, which we've already taken up 2 of those. And it looks like the Mavericks are going to go for D'Angelo Russell, but obviously that is not set in stone. No talks are supposed to be happening yet, so you can't really predict it. But D'Angelo Russell, I think, would be a good fit, right? We need somebody to set up the play, just be a ball handler, shot creator for others while Kyrie is outside of Brandon Williams, right? Brandon Williams isn't proven. He's had 1 year of good basketball in the NBA. So I think D'Angelo Russell could be that guy that fills that need. Other people who I think could fill the need, there's Spencer Dinwiddie. If he comes back, that could fit that spot. I'm uncertain on whether or not that's a good idea, just because he's so inconsistent. He has that one game every 5 games where he drops 20 to 30, and he looks so good. But then there's all of those other games where he's like over 6 and a couple turnovers. He's just not making the right basketball play. That's something you could see with D'Angelo Russell, but I think D'Angelo Russell is a better shooter. He's probably a better creator for others. Still has some boneheadedness to his play, but I think it'd be good overall. Other names that have been thrown around are, before I get to the other names, Dante Exum is another name that I think the Mavericks should consider bringing back. I think we should consider bringing him back and maybe moving on a Jaden Hardy or Omax, because I don't know if either of them can really grow on this team. They don't get enough play time to truly grow out on the court. And honestly, they just kind of have both middled out, for lack of a better word. Jaden Hardy's best year, I think, was his rookie year, and he had a good playoff run last year, but then didn't really live up to his contract. It's a small contract in comparison to like other NBA deals, so it's not like it's the end of the world that he hasn't been a key contributor, but you would want that out of somebody you gave an extension to off their rookie deal. So I mean, Jaden Hardy, Omax, I'm not too high on either of them. I'd be okay moving them on so that we can get somebody who can contribute to the team like a Dante Exum to come back. Other names that have been brought up for the Mavericks that I've seen are Russell Westbrook, Chris Paul, Malcolm Brogdon, DeAnthony Melton. I've seen DeAnthony Melton a little bit less, but I do think that his fit would be great. He was very solid pre-injury, great defender. He can do a little bit for himself on offense too. He can also play off ball. He's never been like that guy, so he can do pretty much whatever you need him to do for the team while being an elite defender. Malcolm Brogdon, I think, is very interesting because I don't think he's really been as injured as the NBA has been saying he's been injured. I think he's just been on teams that have been tanking and they've been shutting him down for the rest of the year. But you look at the last time he was on a good team, I mean, he was the 6th man of the year, and he might be available for the taxpayer mid-level. And that's kind of exciting to me, but the thing is, like, do you trust are the injuries real, or are they just the team is shutting him down so that they lose more because he's better than everybody else on the team? I don't know. I think with something to play for, Malcolm Brogdon could be a great pickup for the Mavericks, just as a stopgap, and then eventually play off of Kyrie Irving and back him up, play with him or Brandon Williams. I think he'd be a good pickup. Chris Paul, obviously on a 1-year rental, like perfect. He could set up everybody, a great passer. Again, stopgap while Kyrie's out, and then he can come off the bench or maybe even play with him. I wouldn't really start both him and Kyrie. I think it'd be too small. But Chris Paul coming in, I think he would be just perfect to help. Yeah, first off, help Cooper Flagg grow as a player, even Derek Lively, and he'd be able to spoon feed Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford dunks, hit PJ Washington and Klay Thompson on open threes. I haven't even talked about Najee Marshall. I love Najee Marshall. Love the knife. But yeah, I think Chris Paul would be perfect for a 1-year rental. I don't know if he'd want to go to Dallas, really, because from everything that I've seen, it sort of looks like he misses home. He misses LA. He's been away from his kids for a couple years since leaving the Clippers, Well, not like away from his kids, but, his teams have been away from his family. So I think it seems like he's kind of itching to get back over there. But if the Mavs can lure him, I think it'd be great. The other one that I mentioned was Russell Westbrook. I'm pretty out on this, honestly. I don't think that would be a good fit. We already have enough people who can't shoot. And there's a little, I don't know if there's actual animosity, but if you remember in the playoffs, whenever the Mavericks beat the Clippers 2024, he did throw a punch at PJ. I don't know. He let his emotions sort of take over in that setting. I don't know if he would gel well as like a personality fit, and honestly on the court fit either. He's a good creator. I'm sure he'd do well for our big men, do well for our open shooters, but he's not going to shoot well. And I think we need someone who's going to shoot well, because outside of Brandon Williams and Klay Thompson, maybe PJ and Cooper Flagg, I don't see much shooting available on the court. Every now and then Max Christie, right? But that's kind of it. I don't really trust anybody else to just hit an open jumper all the time. So using that on like Malcolm Brogdon, Chris Paul, D'Angelo Russell. Malcolm Brogdon, Chris Paul, D'Angelo Russell. I think I'd trust Anthony Melton to hit an open jumper. And Dante Exum and Spencer Dinwiddie, honestly, I would take them over Russell Westbrook too. But it looks like the Mavs are leaning D-Lo. We'll see what happens with that. I'm also interested to see what happens with Kessler Edwards and Kai Jones. I don't think they're coming back to the Mavs, right? We don't have roster spots, really. And neither of them can come back on a two-way. So, but I think they proved themselves on the Mavericks last year. I think they'll probably wind up on an NBA team because of how well they played and how often they played for a team that was fighting to even make the playoffs. It's not like Mavericks weren't playing for nothing. We were playing for something bigger than the lottery. And thank God we didn't get it, right? Wouldn't have Cooper Flagg if we didn't. But yeah, I'm excited to see what Kessler Edwards and Kai Jones can do, just because they were so good for us. The success that the two-way players had for us was awesome. I just loved watching Brandon Williams every day. I really enjoyed Kai Jones' short stint on the team, and Kessler Edwards grew on me. I thought he was kind of to start as a Maverick, but as he kept playing, I really liked his defense that he brought, his effort. And he grew more as an offensive player as the year went on, too. I remember, early on, he wasn't hitting any jump shots, and it was kind of getting on my nerves, but he eventually grew into it, and I think he's got an NBA future. Outside of free agency, trades that we could look at, obviously I talked about Jaden Hardy and Omax being people we can move away. We don't need to, but if we're trying to create roster spots for people that are going to actually play, I think we should. There have been rumors about Lonzo Ball and Kobe White. Andrew Nembhard is somebody who I think we should go after. Do I think the Pacers want to get rid of him? No way. But the Pacers aren't really in a position to do well this next year with Tyrese Haliburton being out. May as well shoot your shot, right? I think it'd be perfect just as a secondary creator. It's hard to win without a secondary creator in the NBA right now. And then another name, Colin Sexton, is somebody that the Mavericks are looking at reportedly, and someone who has been shopped openly on the market. So I think Colin Sexton would be a very interesting get. Probably would have to get rid of Gafford in that sort of situation. I don't know if I would want to get rid of Gafford just because he's on a pretty team-friendly deal right now. And Sexton hasn't proven he can do it, by do it, I mean, like, play well on a contending team. And that's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to contend. But he would be an option to replace Kyrie Irving until Kyrie gets back. And then I think Colin Sexton would be perfect in a 6-man role. That'd be great for him. Lonzo Ball has the same sort of mold as Chris Paul or Malcolm Brogdon. I think, great at just setting up the offense. Once Kyrie gets back, I'm sure he'd want a minutes restriction just because of all the injuries he's had, including the one that took like 2 years off of his NBA career. But I think he's a very solid player, good shooter, amazing passer. He was a great defender pre-injury. I hope he still is. I haven't really seen enough of him yet to determine that. But I'd like to think he's still at least serviceable. I mean, he's got great basketball IQ. He's just a good player. So he's someone I would consider looking at, and especially because him and Kobe White are actually being shopped out on the market. So I would go after either of those guys. Kobe White is probably the best one we could get. But I don't know if we have enough to get him because, outside of the 1 first-round pick that we got in the Luka trade, and then I think we might be able to trade one more first. I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me. But, I just don't know if I would give those, I'd give up 2 firsts in a trade for Kobe White whenever we could just sign somebody in the offseason, like in free agency, like a Malcolm Brogdon, like a Chris Paul, like a D'Lo, even DeAnthony Melton, or trade for his teammate who probably has less value. So, I don't know. I'm not super high on any deals being made in terms of trades. But, I mean, if we're able to convince the Pacers to get rid of Andrew Nembhard, I think that'd be awesome. Because, I mean, he plays with Tyrese Haliburton, right? So he knows how to play off of another guard. So I'm sure he would be able to play off of Kyrie and even elevate his game as a ball handler because Kyrie plays off the ball so well. But, again, I think the Pacers are going to try to run it back, even though they're without their leader. But I think it'd be a good idea to at least try. And then last thing I wanted to talk about, possible future videos. I don't know. This is my first one. I just love talking NBA, and I thought this would be a great place to, document my thoughts on the league. So, I mean, I'd be down to talk about the NBA draft, right, outside of just the Mavericks. Same with free agency. I could probably make a video on that. And then just trades that are going on around the league. Obviously, there have been some insane trades, and I would be down to talk about them. If anybody sees this and comments, let me know if you'd like to see that. If not, I might just do it anyway, to just, I don't know, think out loud and get my ideas out there. But, yeah, if anyone watched, I appreciate it. Bye.